She said, "Relax, it was just a kiss. The real problem is your insecurity." When I confronted her about her coworker, I said, "Then let's fix that." She didn't expect her friends to read her diary out loud at her own birthday dinner. There's a specific kind of silence that settles in a car after you've seen something you can't unsee. It's not a comfortable silence. It's heavy. It's the sound of unspoken words piling up between you, forming a wall. We had just left a company dinner for my girlfriend, Jessica's marketing firm. It was one of those loud, mandatory fun events at a downtown bar with an open tab and a lot of forced laughter. I went to be the supportive boyfriend, as always. And I had supported. I had smiled, I had shaken hands with her boss, and I had listened to her coworker Liam tell a story about his trip to Thailand for the third time. And then I had gone to the restroom. On my way back I saw them, Jessica and Liam. They were in a little alcove near the coat check, partially hidden by a large potted plant. It wasn't a dark corner, the light was hitting them directly. And he was kissing her. It wasn't a quick, drunken peck on the cheek, it was a real kiss. His hands were on her waist, and her hand was on the back of his neck. It was slow and deliberate. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I just froze, stood there behind a pillar, my heart turning into a cold, heavy stone in my chest. They broke apart, she said something to him with a small, private smile, and then they both seamlessly melted back into the crowd as if nothing had happened. I didn't say anything at the bar. I didn't want to be the guy who caused a scene. I just found her, told her I had a headache, and said we should go. Now, sitting in the car, the silence was screaming. She was humming along to the radio, occasionally glancing at me, a little frown on her face. "You've been quiet all night," she finally said, turning the volume down. "Is your headache really that bad?" I pulled the car over to the curb, about 2 blocks from our apartment. I couldn't drive the rest of the way. I couldn't walk into our home pretending that the foundation of it hadn't just cracked. "I saw you," I said, my voice sounding hollow and strange to my own ears. "At the bar, with Liam." I watched her face. For a split second, I saw it. A flash of pure, undiluted panic. Her eyes went wide, but she was a professional. Her job was literally to spin narratives, to control perception. The panic was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a look of weary exasperation. She let out a little, dismissive laugh. "Oh my God," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're serious? That's what this is about?" "You were kissing him, Jessica." "Relax," she said, waving her hand as if shooing away a fly. "It was just a kiss. It was nothing." "Never. Everyone was drinking. It was a work thing. You're blowing this completely out of proportion." It was the casualness of it that stunned me, the complete lack of shame or remorse. She wasn't denying it, she was dismissing it. She was treating my pain as an overreaction, an inconvenience. "A work thing?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "How is that a work thing?" "His hands were all over you." She sighed, a deep, put-up-in sound, as if I were a difficult child she was forced to manage. And then she delivered the line that changed everything. She turned to me, her expression a careful mixture of pity and annoyance, and said, "You know what? The real problem here isn't the kiss. The real problem is your insecurity. It's always been an issue. You're just looking for something to be upset about because you're not confident in yourself or in us." Insecurity. She took my legitimate hurt, my reaction to a blatant act of betrayal I had witnessed with my own eyes, and she diagnosed it as a character flaw. My flaw. The problem wasn't her actions. It was my perception of them, filtered through my own supposed weakness. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. She wasn't just trying to escape blame, she was trying to make me blame myself. I looked at her, at this woman I had loved for 4 years, the woman I was planning to propose to later this year, and I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, a deep, throbbing ache, but something else was crystallizing around it, a cold, quiet resolve. She had given me an out. She had defined the problem. My insecurity. "You're right," I said. Her expression softened immediately. She thought she had won. She thought I was accepting her twisted logic. "I'm glad you see that," she said, reaching over to pat my arm. "We can work on it, together." I pulled my arm away, not angrily but deliberately. I looked her straight in the eye. "Then let's fix that," I said. I started the car and drove the last 2 blocks to our apartment in that same heavy silence. She didn't know what to make of my tone. She didn't understand that when I said I wanted to fix my insecurity, I didn't mean I was going to start meditating or repeating positive affirmations. I meant I was going to eliminate the source of the uncertainty. I was going to find the absolute, undeniable truth. Because insecurity is born from doubt, from not knowing where you stand. I decided, in that moment, that I was going to find out exactly where I stood. The next few days were a strange performance. I was quiet, withdrawn. Jessica treated me with a sort of condescending patience, as if I were recovering from a minor illness. She would suggest I talk about my feelings, or leave articles open on her laptop about overcoming relationship anxiety. She was doubling down on her narrative. I was the patient, and she was the long-suffering doctor. It was insulting, but I let her do it. I needed her to believe she was in control. My quest for truth began with a simple, nagging question. If she was so casual about a kiss like that, what else was she casual about? My insecurity, as she called it, wasn't just a feeling. It was a logical conclusion based on new data, and I needed more data. I didn't want to snoop. The idea felt dirty beneath me, but she had reframed the entire situation. This wasn't about trust anymore. She had already broken that. This was about verification. She claimed I was insecure. An insecure person worries without evidence. A secure person, I reasoned, gathers evidence and then makes a decision. I was going to become the most secure man on the planet. The opportunity came that Saturday. She was going to a day-long Women in Business conference, an event she was very excited about. I told her I was going to spend the day at my parents' house, helping my dad with some yard work. It was the perfect alibi. As soon as she left, her heels clicking down the hallway, I began. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I started with her laptop, but it was clean. She was too smart for that. Emails, messages, all professional and platonic. Then I remembered her old habit. In college, she used to keep a journal, a physical pen and paper journal. She said it helped her process her journey. I hadn't seen her write in one in years, but on a hunch I started looking. I found it in the back of her closet, tucked away in a shoebox filled with old photos and letters. It was a simple, leather-bound notebook. Her name was embossed on the cover. My heart was pounding. This felt like a point of no return. But her voice echoed in my head. The real problem is your insecurity. I opened the first page. It wasn't a diary in the traditional sense. It was a collection of thoughts, frustrations, and observations, written every few days. The first few months of entries were normal. She wrote about work, about our dates, about a funny movie we saw. But then, about 6 months ago, Liam's name started appearing more and more frequently. At first, it was just about work. Liam is so smart, he really gets my vision. Then it became more personal. Had drinks with Liam after work. It's so easy to talk to him. He understands the creative soul. My name, when it appeared, was usually in contrast. Tom is so sweet, but he doesn't really get the fire in me. He's so practical. Sometimes I feel like I'm settling. Settling. The word was a punch to the gut. I kept reading, my hands shaking slightly. The entries became more and more damning. She detailed their emotional connection. She wrote about the thrill of their secret lunches, the inside jokes, the electric feeling when their hands brushed. She was living a completely separate, secret life. And then I found the entry from 3 weeks ago. It finally happened. After the pitch meeting, Liam and I went for a celebratory drink and ended up back at his place. I feel terrible, but I also feel alive. I haven't felt this way in years. Tom is my safety net, my home base. I know that sounds awful, but I'm not ready to give that up. He provides a stability that Liam never could. I know I need to end it with Liam, but I don't want to. Is it so wrong to want both? The safety and the fire? The rest of the entry was a long, self-serving justification of her actions. She wasn't a cheater. She was a complex woman torn between two worlds. She wasn't betraying me. She was on a journey of self-discovery. She wrote about my predictability, my lack of spontaneity, how I was a good man but not a great love story. She was writing the script for a movie in which she was the tortured romantic heroine, and I was the boring, supporting character. The obstacle. I sat there on the floor of our closet, surrounded by her shoes and clothes, and I felt nothing. The pain was gone. The hurt was gone. The insecurity was gone. It had been replaced by a profound, chilling clarity. I wasn't insecure. I had been a fool. My gut feeling hadn't been a weakness. It had been a warning system that I had been diligently ignoring. I closed the journal. My first instinct was to pack my bags and leave, to just disappear from her life. But that felt too easy. It felt like letting her win. She would just spin another narrative, tell her friends that I was emotionally unstable, that my insecurity had finally driven me away. She would remain the victim, the long-suffering partner of a difficult man. No, that wasn't going to happen. She had built her entire identity around a carefully crafted public image. She was the charming, successful, put-together woman with the sweet, stable boyfriend. She performed for her friends, for her family, for her coworkers. Her life was a stage. And I decided, in that moment, that I was going to give her the performance of a lifetime. I was going to take her own words, her own private, authentic thoughts, and put them on center stage for everyone to see. Her 30th birthday was in 3 weeks. She was planning a big dinner at her favorite upscale Italian restaurant. She had already booked a private room, invited 20 of her closest friends. It was meant to be the crowning event of her year, a celebration of her wonderful life. It was the perfect venue. My plan began to form, not out of rage, but out of a cold, methodical need for justice. This wasn't about humiliating her for the sake of it. It was about correcting the record. She had accused me of being insecure. I was going to prove with documented evidence that I was the most secure person in the room, because I was the only one who knew the complete truth. And I was going to fix my insecurity by making sure everyone else knew it too. I took out my phone and took pictures of the most damning pages of her diary. I captured the entry about sleeping with Liam, the parts where she called me her safety net, the passages where she belittled me as boring and predictable, the lines where she talked about manipulating her friends' perceptions of our perfect relationship. I had my evidence. The next 3 weeks were the longest performance of my life. I played the part of the repentant boyfriend, working on his issues. I was more attentive. I listened patiently when she talked about her day. I agreed that I needed to be more trusting. I even let her drag me to a couples yoga class where I twisted myself into painful positions while a woman named Sky told us to breathe into our shared energy. It was nauseating, but it was necessary. I needed her to believe I was back in my box, that the supportive, predictable Tom was back online. Meanwhile, I was making my own preparations. I told her I wanted to do something special for her birthday dinner, a tribute. I said I wanted to put together a little roast and toast, where her friends could share funny stories about her. She loved the idea. It appealed to her vanity, her desire to be the center of attention. She gave me the email list of all the attendees so I could coordinate the surprise. I emailed everyone, telling them about the roast and toast idea. But I also added a little twist. I told them that as a special surprise, a few of us would be doing a dramatic reading of some of Jessica's old creative writing from her college journals to show how far she'd come. It was a lie, of course, but a plausible one. Then I hired a professional. I went on a freelance website and found a local actress, a woman with a great voice and a flair for dramatic readings. I met with her, explained the situation, and gave her the script I had prepared. The script was composed entirely of verbatim quotes from Jessica's diary, carefully arranged into a narrative. I told the actress that she was to pose as an old college friend of Jessica's, named Catherine, who had just moved back to town. I paid her well for the one-night gig. The night of the birthday dinner arrived. The private room at the restaurant was beautiful. Candles, flowers, a long table filled with 20 of Jessica's smiling friends. Liam was there, sitting a few seats down from me, looking smug. Jessica was at the head of the table, glowing, soaking in the adoration. She looked over at me and gave me a warm, appreciative smile, the kind you give to a well-behaved pet. She thought this was all for her, and in a way it was. After the main course, I stood up, clinking my glass for attention. "All right, everyone," I said, my voice steady. "As you know, Jessica is a pretty special person, and I wanted to do something to celebrate her journey. We're going to hear a few stories from some of you. But first, I have a surprise. an old friend of Jessica's. Catherine, who just moved back to town, is going to kick things off with a dramatic reading of some of Jessica's early writing, a little look back at the artist as a young woman. I gestured to the actress, Catherine, who stood up, holding a few printed pages. She was perfect. She looked the part. Jessica looked confused for a second, clearly not recognizing her, but she was too caught up in the moment to question it. Catherine began to read, her voice clear and theatrical. "A reading from Reflections," she announced. She started with a relatively harmless passage about Jessica's ambition, her desire to make her mark on the world. People smiled, nodding along. Jessica looked pleased. Then the tone shifted. Catherine read the entry about Liam. "There's a fire in Liam that Tom just doesn't have. He sees the world in color, while Tom sees it in spreadsheets. Talking to him feels like coming home to a place I've never been." I watched Jessica's face. Her smile faltered, a flicker of confusion appeared. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Catherine continued, her voice gaining intensity. "I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I feel more myself with Liam than I have in years. Tom is my safety net, my home base. He's a good man, but not a great love story. Is it so wrong to want both, the safety and the fire?" The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring, first at the reader, then at Jessica, then at me, then at Liam. The air was thick with tension. Jessica's face had gone from confused to horrified. She was shaking her head slightly, a silent plea. But Catherine wasn't finished. She moved on to the final, most devastating passages, the ones where Jessica wrote about her friends. "Sometimes I feel like I'm performing for them," she read, looking around the table. "I have to be the successful, happy one. Sarah thinks my life is perfect, but she doesn't see the cracks. And Megan, I love her, but she's so needy. I have to constantly manage her emotions. It's exhausting." Sarah and Megan were sitting right across from Jessica. Their faces crumpled in hurt and disbelief. Catherine delivered the final line, a quote about me. "I know I should break up with Tom. It's the honest thing to do, but I'm not ready to give up this apartment, this life. He's just too convenient. I'll do it eventually, when the time is right for me." She finished, folded the papers neatly, and said, "Wow, powerful stuff. So raw and honest." Then she sat down. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of 20 people's perception of one person shattering all at once. Jessica looked like she had been turned to stone. Her face was a mask of pure, abject horror. Liam was staring at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. I stood up again into the silence. "So," I said, my voice calm and clear, "that's the truth. And now that I know the truth, I'm not insecure anymore. Turns out the problem wasn't my insecurity after all." I placed my napkin on the table. "Happy birthday, Jessica," I said. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her there in the ruins of the life she had so carefully constructed. I didn't look back. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. My phone exploded with texts and calls. Angry, crying voicemails from Jessica, confused texts from her friends. A few, surprisingly, were from friends who were on my side, telling me they were sorry for what she'd done. Sarah and Megan, the friends she had insulted in her diary, apparently left the dinner right after I did. Her perfect friend group had fractured. Jessica sent me a long, rambling email a few days later. It was a mess of apologies, justifications, and accusations. She said I had humiliated her, that I was cruel and vindictive. She said she loved me, that the diary was just a place for her to vent, that she didn't mean any of it, but the words were hollow. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was just sorry that everyone knew. I didn't reply. I just forwarded her the email I had sent to the actress, the one with the subject line, "Dramatic Reading Script," which contained the verbatim quotes from her own diary. My only message was, I didn't write a single word. I moved out the following weekend. She wasn't there. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had gone to stay with her parents. Her big city life, her perfect job, her adoring friends, it had all been tarnished. The narrative she had so carefully controlled was no longer hers to write. I never felt a moment of regret. She had called me insecure to cover for her own betrayal. She had tried to make her problem my fault. I didn't seek revenge, I sought clarity. And once I had it, I just decided to share. In the end, I didn't destroy her life. I just read her own words out loud. And sometimes, the truth is all it takes.